Hi, EJ here. Welcome back to NonCompete. This morning, I am heading down to Ho Chi Minh City for the 50th anniversary of the liberation of that beautiful city. So I'm very excited about that, but it means I don't have a ton of time to make a video that I think urgently needs to be made. So we're just doing this simple way. If you haven't heard, about a week ago, there was an announcement that Health and Human Services in the USA is going to build a national registry of autistic people. And they're going to get this information to build this registry from people's private healthcare records, which means the government would be appropriating private healthcare records of United States citizens to build a national list of people who have autism. Now, I am virtually positive that I myself am autistic. I have never gotten a diagnosis. The reason why I haven't gotten a diagnosis is because I discovered that I'm autistic after I became class conscious, and I know way too much about the history of fascism and the current circumstances in the USA to allow myself to be put on a national registry of autistic people, which, it's just a matter of time before that actually happens. Now, I will say two or 3 days ago, or maybe it was even today, they walked it back and said they're not going to do the national registry. They're just going to do a major, huge national study about autism instead. But Bobby Kennedy, the director of HHS, said that they don't care about peer review, and they already have the results they want in mind, which is they're going to say that it's because of vaccines. You can look into that yourself if you think I'm exaggerating. That's basically what's going on. This is eugenics, and eugenics isn't new in the USA. I really encourage everyone to study the history of eugenics. I'll probably do a video on it from a historical materialist perspective eventually. It needs to be done. But starting in the 19th century, eugenics was so ubiquitous that everyone in the West was doing it. Everyone. Of course, the liberals and the conservatives and the fascists were doing eugenics and studying it and promoting it, but also communists and anarchists were studying it in the 19th and early 20th century as well. It was just considered to be a science. It was considered to be like physics or astronomy. Eugenics is not just pseudoscience, but it is vicious ideology that we know today runs in service of capitalism. Capitalists use ableism and eugenics to dehumanize people who they don't consider to be productive workers or productive enough. Eugenics and ableism are the social forces of superstructure that capitalism uses to police people into either being workers or being disposable. I do not know what to tell you right now if you are autistic or think you might be autistic. I can't give you medical advice. I think the best thing to do would be to get diagnosed and get treatment. I think that a lot of people can't live without their treatment and their medication and their diagnosis. But politically, it is now dangerous to be known as neurodivergent or disabled. We know that during COVID, there was eugenistic and genital, I can't say that word, I'll have to bleep that, I guess. There was eugenistic triaging of patients where people who had disabilities were being served with less priority than people who were considered abled. I gotta say, too, that I'm privileged in the fact that I can go without a diagnosis. I have been autistic my whole life. I just only recently relatively became aware of that fact, and I am able to do just fine without an autism diagnosis in the USA. For one thing, I don't live in the USA. So I very much acknowledge that, and I'm not encouraging people not to get a diagnosis. Again, I don't know what to tell you what to do. It's going to depend on your personal circumstances. You have to make these decisions for yourself. Most autistic people should get proper health care and should get proper diagnoses. I mean, everyone should be able to freely go see a doctor and have that private relationship where you can get what you need to survive. Oops. So I want to make that very clear. I'm not prescribing to people to avoid getting a diagnosis. I think that everyone should be able to get their diagnosis, and it is heartbreaking that it's a danger. But it has been a danger for over a century in the USA. And I also want to say, eugenics never went anywhere. The word eugenics became unpopular after basically everything that happened with the Third Reich. But the practice of eugenics never went away. And you could see that in the 1950s, immediately after World War II, there were plenty of eugenicist programs. The things that they did to black people in the United States could certainly be called eugenics, especially with a lot of the medical research they were doing without disclosing it to black people. The ways that they were sterilizing indigenous people, and up until this decade, they've been carrying out eugenicist programs against indigenous people. The way that, if you follow ableism at all, you'll see countless horror stories from people talking about the ways that they've dealt with eugenicist policies and programs in the USA and other Western nations. So eugenics never went anywhere. It's alive and well. It's a program of the ruling class, and it's something that we all have to deal with. And by the way, the last thing I want to say is everybody watching this is going to be disabled eventually if you're not disabled already. And I know that neurodivergence and disability are not necessarily the same thing. There's a lot of overlap, and for me it overlaps a lot. My disability and my neurodivergence and my mental health issues are all dialectically related to each other for me. So that's why I talk about them together in the same breath like I do. Anyway, eugenics is alive and well in the USA, and we all have to, the first step of fighting it is making everyone aware of what it is and that it needs to be fought, because it's so embedded into the fabric of our society that most people don't even realize it's a problem. Anybody that is even familiar with the term eugenics probably thinks of it as an old-fashioned concept. It's not. It's a modern practice. It's a modern pseudoscience, and we're seeing right now just how much power it has because the ruling class supports these eugenicist policies. So please get together with your friends, family, coworkers, educate yourself, fight this problem. But no, we have to understand that the material basis of this problem, of eugenics, of ableism, is capitalism. And so we have to teach our fellow disabled people and our fellow neurodivergent people that capitalism is very much the reason that eugenics and ableism exist in the form they do today. I have a lot of videos on my channel that explain more about the relationship between the economic base and the superstructure of society. So you can watch the last probably half a dozen or so videos that I've made where I talk about that a lot. And it's certainly not, if you're just kind of new to these ideas, I don't want you to think that me saying that capitalism is the root problem is me trying to undermine the problem of ableism and undermine the threat of eugenics. They're very real, horrible problems that I myself struggle with. All I'm saying is that capitalism is the reason that they have taken such a monumental position in our society, and capitalism is what fuels all of this organized effort against us. And defeating capitalism is instrumental to dismantling eugenics and pushing back against these ableist ideas, because the base determines the superstructure. The superstructure certainly impacts back on the base. And eugenics and ableism strengthen capitalism when they are allowed to go unfettered, as they have been for decades. So we have to do both at the same time. We have to fight eugenics and ableism, because doing so and making successes for disabled and neurodiverse people weakens the ruling class. And we have to fight capitalism, because eradicating capitalism, eradicating that base through class-conscious revolutionary activity is the only way to have a long-term permanent solution to these superstructural issues. And if none of that makes sense to you, then again, go watch some of our other videos. This nation, the USA, does not value, and I'm talking about the state, the bourgeois state of the USA does not value the lives of disabled people. It has turned autistic people into an enemy. It has used autism to target and try to dismantle vital life-saving technologies like vaccines. It's horrible. It's a miserable time to be disabled or neurodivergent, and I'm both. So all I can tell you is this is not something we should be accepting. Now, the fact that they walked back this announcement of a national registry, that doesn't make me feel better, because I know how these capitalist forces work, and I know how they engage with the superstructure. This was what you would call a test balloon, okay? And I know this from all the work I've done studying and working with LGBTQ plus people. It's very, very common, and I've got a video about this, for the capitalists to initially push ideas that they think might not be super popular with the people. They initially float it as what's called a test balloon. And they do this with anti-LGBTQ plus legislation all the time. The reason being that most people in the USA, if you look at it statistically, support LGBTQ plus people. So they have to astroturf and spend millions and millions of dollars to force through anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. And one of the main ways they do this is through test balloons, where they will push out programs or push out legislation and just see how people react to it. And then they'll often roll that back, maybe in one state or one city or one region, and then push even harder as they start to build, as they start to move the Overton window, I guess is one way of saying it, or as they start to condition people in bourgeois civil society into becoming more tolerant of these reprehensible ideas. So just because they announced they would make the registry and then quickly pulled it back, that doesn't mean that's the end of this. So keep an eye on this topic. Pay attention to what's going on. This is not the end of this struggle. This struggle has been going on for well over a century, since the beginning of capitalism in this current form. So that's pretty much all I've got to say for now. I will try to make a video in the future to document this more, but please pay attention to what Health and Human Services is doing. Health and Human Services is, if it has ever been a force for good in the USA, it is now a fascist tool for oppression, eugenics, and that other word that I can't say that starts with a G and ends with an "ide." These are difficult times we're living through, but if we work together and build a material base for a class-conscious movement, we can get through this. So keep working, keep organizing, keep studying, and take care of each other. I'm EJ. Thanks for watching.